May you leave behind you a whole string of empty tombs. That's my Easter greeting to you. It wasn't original with me. I stole it from somebody, but it's the best, perhaps the best Easter greeting. May you leave behind you a whole string of empty tombs. Because the resurrection of Jesus Christ is not a way about how to live. It's not about how to live. It's about how to live again and again and again and again. Because in our gospel, we have Jesus raised up from his crucifixion, has been turned by God into a resurrection. And that is precisely what Jesus promises to us. If we will live deeply in the faith in the resurrection, that our crucifixions will be turned into resurrections. Our many graves will be opened. And so we will be able to live again and again and again, and we will rise from our many graves again and again and again, and we will leave behind us a whole string of empty tombs. And so in our gospel, we can begin to see how this is true and how we can begin to deepen our faith in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So what we're talking about when we talk about God raising up Jesus from the dead and turning his crucifixions into resurrections, we have a big religious word for it, redemption. But here's the problem, is that we can misunderstand redemption, and that's possibly because we're Americans. When we hear that Jesus is always working within the hearts of everyone, everywhere, at all the time, to turn their their crucifixions into resurrections, we can tend, maybe as Americans, to say, oh, well, that means that Jesus is going to fix everything. So, let me tell you, Jesus, I've got some problems and difficulties. This illness has touched my life, and some people have betrayed me, and I've had some financial difficulties, and so I want you to fix those. But the trouble is that redemption doesn't mean fixing. Because all we have to do is look at the gospel and we can see that Jesus was not fixed. God didn't fix Jesus. Because fixing things means, like, if I said, Leaf, there's a light bulb up there that's out, and there's actually two of them that are out. And I said, Leaf, will you fix those two? And then what he could do is go into some storeroom somewhere in the church, and he would pick out two light bulbs that are just exactly like the ones in there, and he would plug them in, and he would fix it. And the thing about fixing is that it would be exactly like it was before. It'd be 100% what it was before, and nobody would even know that there was any difference between the light bulb. That's what fixing is about. But Jesus is not fixed. The crucified Jesus is not fixed, because we can see right from the gospel that Mary Magdalene is there. And Mary Magdalene is the woman who knows Jesus better than any other woman besides his mother. And she doesn't recognize him at first. So something has changed. Jesus is the same, but Jesus is also different. And so what's different is that Jesus has been transformed. There's been transformation, not fixed. Not fixed. He's not back exactly like he was before. And the other way we know that is because he still has the wounds in his hands and in his side. So Jesus didn't get fixed. Jesus got transformed. And so the resurrection is about transformation. It's about how God changes evil into good. It's about how things are healed. Jesus has his wounds, but they're wounds that are healed. They're wounds that have been transformed. And so the resurrection is about how God can change our crucifixions into resurrections time after time after time. But we are still going to have our wounds. The wounds are going to be there. They're not going to be fixed. They'll be there, but they'll be healed and they'll be transformed. And the glory of God will shine out of our wounds. And our wounds will be our glory, just as the glory of Jesus is his wounds. But we will not be fixed. A man and a woman have been married for 20 years, and let's say they suffer the tragedy of divorce. And so they have to be saying to themselves, what happened to that 20 years? What about that 20 years? I lived those 20 years like they were worth a life. And now that whole part of my life, what happened to it? Do we really think there's any fix for that? There's no way to fix that. There's no way to go into some storeroom in the Church of Jesus Christ and find a replaceable part for the 20 years of their lives that they feel have now, they don't know what happened to them. There's no way to pull out a replaceable part for their divorce and to plug it in and it will be fixed. There's no fix for that. But it can be transformed. It can be redeemed. It can be healed. It can be, the evil can be changed into good, because that's what redemption is about. It's how God, and only God, seriously, can change evil into good. God can change crucifixions into resurrection. You and I can't. We can cooperate with it, but we can't do it. But the power of God can do it. The power of the resurrected Jesus Christ can turn our crucifixions into resurrections, but they're not healed. We're going to have the wounds, but they can be healed and transformed, and the evil can be turned into good. Young woman, nowadays a girl, young boy, a girl nowadays, they're online so much and our friends are online. And somebody starts a rumor about you and trashes your whole reputation, trashes it, and all your friends think that you're a terrible person and they leave you. Well, there's no fix for that. There's no way for somebody to go into a storeroom in the church and take out the piece of your heart that's broken and plug it into your broken heart so you don't feel it anymore, so that it's like it never happened. There's no way to heal that. I mean, there's no way to fix that, but there is a way for that to be redeemed. There's a way for that to be healed and transformed. There's a way for the evil of that to be changed into good. And one of the things that's so hard for young people is, of course, that something happens that they think they can't live through it. They think they'll die from it. They feel like they've died before they died. But then those of us who are, we've been through the spin cycle once or twice, we know, oh no, wait a while. Yeah, you're going to live through it. And not only will you live through it, but it may take a while, it may take years, it may take a decade, but you will begin to see how God is able to begin to turn the evil, to begin to turn it and turn it and turn it until you say, well, okay, but some good came out of that. Look what I've made myself to be in response to that. I'm a better person now than I was before. And God took that evil and began to turn it and change it into some good. And you know what? I like the person I am now. I don't like what happened to me, but I like the person that I've been transformed into because I had to deal with it in faith in God and in faith in Jesus Christ, and to forgive and to love and to work through it. And eventually we will say, yes, it was evil, but God has used it for some good. It has been transformed. It has been healed. So let's try to think of the worst case that we could think of. Let's say someone is abused by a parent or a relative, or by, God forbid, a priest of God, that they have been abused. Or some woman has been assaulted, or some young woman young woman has been assaulted. Well, do we really think there's a fix for that? Do we really think that there's some place in the church that we can go and get the replaceable part for their soul that has been twisted and torn and broken and hurt? Do we really think there's some replaceable part that can be plugged in and it will be fixed like it never happened? There's no fix for that. But there is redemption for that. There is nothing that cannot be redeemed by God. By the power of God, anything can be redeemed. There is no death that God cannot bring life from. That's what the resurrection tells us and what it promises us. that there is no death that God could not bring life from. But what the resurrected Jesus brings to us is redemption, which is the miraculous ability to change evil into good. And we won't know how it happens. We won't be able to do it ourselves. We can cooperate with it, but we won't be able to do it ourselves. But it will mysteriously happen, because that's what Jesus is doing in the lives and the hearts of all people all the time. Some people think that Jesus is just, what God and Jesus are doing is they're just keeping track of what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right. Wrong? What kind of a God would that be? No, what Jesus is doing, Jesus notices what we do right and wrong. But what Jesus is always doing is working in whatever has gone wrong to reverse the effects, so that what was done for evil can be turned to good. Jesus works in everything, all of the evil and all that has gone wrong, to reverse it, to heal it, to transform it, so that through the miraculous power of God, what was done for evil can be turned into good. And so we celebrate on Easter every time. We celebrate the fact that there is nothing that cannot be redeemed by God. There is no crucifixion that cannot be redeemed by God. None of the crucifixions of our lives, there is not one that can be redeemed by God. And so we celebrate Easter joy. But what Easter joy? We need to approach Easter joy like a learner. It's not like woohoo, happiness kind of joy. That's dependent on circumstances. We need to approach it like a learner and say, what is this joy of Jesus that Jesus has, that the resurrected Jesus has, that we share in? Because that joy is more like the joy that we don't ever have to live anymore as if any of the deaths that touch us are the last word. We get to live so that fear of losing ourselves, fear of some sort of death it doesn't have to be the driving force of our lives anymore. It's the joy that God always has the last word. It's like the little girl who went to Sunday school, and she came back home and her mother said, well, what did you learn, dear? And she says, oh, we learned that they made him dead with nails in his hands. But, he got up again. He got up again. And so death never has the last word. Evil never has the last word. There's no end to things that God can't bring a start from. There's no death that God cannot bring life from. God always has the last word. That little girl knew what she was talking about. And that's the joy of the resurrection. And it takes us a while to learn it. It takes us a lifetime how to learn it. But more and more we learn to live in the depths of our faith in that resurrection, is that our crucifixions can be turned into resurrections, and that nobody has the last word but God. And there is no death that God cannot bring life out of. He got up again. And so that's why I say, as we continue and we will gather around the altar, that's why I say that maybe the best Easter greeting is, may you leave behind a whole string of empty tombs.